So it would depend. We're probably still going to try to save the same dollar amount. It just would might shift where we save it. Whereas right now, I'm encouraging a lot of clients to use a Roth, whereas you pay your taxes now, you don't pay them again unless you make some stupid decisions. So we shed that tax liability. It'll be a case-by-case scenario. I think younger people probably will still encourage that, but older people, we might have to switch when we're attempting to save it. It will depend each case-by-case scenario on each individual plan as to what we're trying to accomplish and where I see the long-term projections going. The nice thing is I have some pretty cool software that can help us make some of those decisions, but it is something that I'm going to have to bring up. Okay, now you're in this tax bracket, you're going to pay an extra $6,000-$7,000 a year in taxes if we do this, but if we shift it here, we might get that down to $5,000, and here's the net benefit in the long run.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. What's something you're saving up for? Maybe it's that dream vacation, helping your kids get started after high school, or just being able to retire comfortably one day. Whatever your goal is, how do you plan to get there? A lot of people turn to financial advisors for help. Today's guest is one of those advisors, and he's here to talk about what he does and how he helps people turn their financial goals into reality. He has to keep an eye on the markets, interest rates, inflation, and even global events, but also laws and policies that come out of Washington, all of which could impact his clients' money. We're not only going to talk to him about what he does, but also get into a conversation he had with a friend about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and what he found out after crunching the numbers on how much he personally saved. I want to welcome David McNeilly to the podcast. David, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Nice. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But you didn't actually go to college to become a financial advisor. What did you originally study?
My degree is actually in pastoral ministry and education.
Nice.
So my dad has been, now it's almost 50 years that he's been in ministry. So I thought that would be a similar trajectory. And got out of college and just wasn't 100% sure that's a field I should get into. Finally, I had a very good spiritual mentor of mine just say, hey, if you don't feel like that's 100% the direction you should go, it's probably not the direction you should go. So then it was, well, what am I going to do now? And I was teaching at a alternative high school and realized like there's no upward trajectory here and very little impact like I thought there would be. And so I decided, well, let's just put all the cards back on the table and figure out, okay, what do I want to do? So I've always enjoyed finance, love helping people, and always wanted to run my own business. So about almost 13 years ago, started doing just that. It's been quite a journey. Wouldn't trade it for the world, but it's been a lot of fun. And in a way, I still feel like I am. Half of what I do is counseling, therapy, ministry of some sort. I feel like to working with my clients.
It's funny. I had a friend from college who actually was an advisor for me for some time. And he started as teaching at a private Christian high school as a math teacher. So he had a math brain and he was good at it. But he found that he really enjoyed time in like the break room, telling his colleagues, how they could earn more, how they could invest better, how they could structure things. And eventually he switched over and became a financial advisor and has had his own firm for a few decades now. And I think that's a pretty cool trajectory. And I think you're totally right. I mean, it's something you do where you're making a huge difference in people's lives. I got to imagine that's got to be pretty fulfilling.
It is. There was a point in time I told my wife I could do this job for $50,000 a year and be happy as a pig in slop. So, but not that that's what the end goal was, but it was. There's a lot of fulfillment, not just financially, but seeing people accomplish and do some of the things that they've set out to do, and aspirations they've had. I had a client buy a lake cottage recently that had been working on that for years. Another client took their family to Disney in this last January, something they've been wanting to do for years. So it's just really cool to watch people grow and get to grow alongside with them and come along for the journey.
Fabulous. Yeah. So maybe if you wanted to start out just explaining what you do.
Yeah, so I call myself a financial strategist. Some people would call themselves a financial planner, and it's a little different than just managing people's money. It is part of what I do, but the most important part of what I do, in my opinion, is take the time to understand what people want out of life. What do they want to accomplish? And everybody's a little bit different. Some people have very good long-term goals. Some people haven't even thought about what they really want long-term. So taking the time to challenge them and get them thinking about it. That's one of my funnest conversations I get to have.
Yeah.
Especially with clients. And then make sure that everything they're doing financially supports that. I've had clients that wanted to spin off and start a business at some point. Okay, well, that's going to be difficult to do if you're saving a ton of money into your retirement plans. So let's make sure we have the right strategy to support that. A lot of my clients are business owners, so just having some sort of retirement plan is not enough. There's different things, there's different needs that business owners have. And then once you get to retirement, how do you take all that money and give it back to yourselves? I mean, the investment world is set up for advisors to keep money, and then don't do a really good job of teaching advisors how to hand money back to clients in a very strategic way. So there's different things that we can employ and different financial tools that I use with people in retirement so that, this tool over here does something very well that this tool doesn't do well. And so combining them stretches people's dollars out further and allows them to live a much more fulfilling life without having to worry about what goes on in the economy, the market, or even the tax environment world. They know that, hey, no matter what happens, we have a strategy or a plan, so to speak, in to counter that. I sometimes liken it to, I'm a big football guy, sports guy. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I liken it to just having an audible in retirement, being able to, if you get to the line and you see the market's going to blitz you, we got to have an audible to change up and be able to take advantage of that, and it's at least still move the ball forward so we're not taking a sack.
That's great. Yeah, that resonates with me. I'm a football guy too, so that's cool.
Yeah. So are you a Bears fan then?
I'm not. I actually I live in the Chicago area, but I grew up in New Jersey, so I'm a New York Giants fan, which has been very ungratifying recently.
You broke my heart twice in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady, so.
Yeah, I've always been a big Tom Brady fan because the Giants beat him in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, hey, so I got to imagine one of the most gratifying things here, you kind of alluded to this, is helping people realize some dreams that they maybe didn't think they were going to achieve. So what are maybe some of those dreams that you feel like you've played a part in helping folks achieve?
Well, one of them, I just, the family that I just mentioned a minute ago, they went to Disney World. Man, we've been talking about that for 5, 6, maybe even 7 years. And just getting them to a place where they're able to accomplish that and take 4 kids. Another one with a lake house. Another just being able to get to retirement. I think a more recent one is having a client being able to retire 3 years earlier. And that really made a big impact on her because she wants to move out to the Southwest where her grandkids live now. And so being able to do that a little earlier, she gets to be involved in their lives a little bit more and even help her own daughter out a little bit more. So those are the kind of things that just it's less about the financial stuff. The financial stuff is important, but it's you get to go live your life the way you want and the way you feel is the best use of your time. And that, it's a very American thing to have that freedom and capability. So let's help people with the freedom financially to be able to do that.
So, you mentioned, I think this is an important part, is that you want to help almost insulate to the degree you can your clients from policy changes, economic realities, to try to plan for those things to limit the volatility. But inevitably, what happens in Washington or even the state level is going to impact a lot of your clients and how you advise them. How do you help your clients kind of plan for market changes, but also some of those policy changes and tax changes out of Washington?
How do we plan for it? Well, first of all, I've got to stay informed on it. So I follow a lot of the politics of like what are the proposals for economic tax and what are the implications of that. So obviously lately the one we've been really keeping an eye on is the Trump renewing the Trump tax cuts. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Can we get that going forward? Are we going to be able to? If not, how's that going to impact your retirement savings? Because right now I'm telling people if taxes go higher in the future, it's better to pay them now versus later. Okay, well, if that means if the Trump tax cuts do expire, how does that change our savings? So, maybe right now we're using more Roth or things on this side of the tax line that we've already paid taxes on. Maybe we'd have to shift towards deferring that tax towards retirement. But then again, that's not something you really want to do, because who knows what the tax environment is going to be 20, 30, 40 years from now when you're in the middle of retirement and towards the end in your 80s. So just keeping an eye on that is number one. Number two, having the conversation with them around, okay, if this happens, here's what we might think about doing. And the younger you are, the less impact that has. But the ones that are close to retirement, we're really keeping an eye on those kind of changes. Not that this isn't on the chopping block at the moment, but maybe they'll, again, move the Social Security age back even further or change Social Security benefits. Those are the things that I'm constantly keeping an eye on so that we can stay informed and have the conversation with our clients. Because like you said, my goal is to build a buffer around your retirement so you just get to go live life without really much worry. And the less worry you have in retirement, the more enjoyable life is.
Yeah, I think it's a great approach. So my understanding is that you were having a conversation with a friend about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Why were you talking about it, and what did you discover from that conversation?
That's my buddy Aaron. And Aaron and I are really good friends. We actually started as advisors together, and he's off in a different path. We kind of separated paths, but we really good friends and still stay in contact. And he comes more from the liberal Democrat side of things, and I've learned a lot of really good things from him. But one of the things that I shared with him was this constant mantra, and I even heard it on a podcast this morning or something I was listening to, where the Democrats are like, oh, it's just a giveaway to the rich. It's just a giveaway to the rich, these tax cuts. And I just have a fundamental disagreement with that. I think it has massively been a big benefit to the middle class families, and I'm an example of that. Last year, when I did my taxes for 2023, I did the math and I pulled up, I think of the last year before the tax cuts was 2016. So pulled up the 2016 tax rates, and I just did the math on what would I have paid versus for 2023 with the 2016 rates versus the 2023 rates. And I found that actually I would have paid about $4,400, $4,700 more in taxes last year than I would have with the 2016 rates than I would have than I actually had to. So in other words, the Trump tax cuts I'm squarely in the middle class. I'm not in the upper middle class. I'm not in the bottom middle class. I'm, squarely in the middle class, probably right in the middle on the average. And that really opened my eyes of like, wow, that's actually a big savings. That, I got to take my wife and daughter on a Disney cruise, probably in part because of that, this last January, because of the tax savings. So had those tax savings not been in place, might not have been able to go. So it does actually have a real world impact on middle class families. And I again did it when I was in DC a couple of weeks ago. Again, did the net math for this last year for 2024, and I think the savings again was around $3,900 dollars in tax savings for me and my family again. So that it boggles my mind or drives me nuts a little bit. I know it's a talking point and it's easy one that people are easy to buy into real fast because it sounds like all these, it's just for the wealthy, but it really, in my opinion, is not. And I've seen, I can talk client after client after client that I've had conversations with when they're doing their taxes. And, I've encouraged them to do the math the same way. And sure enough, a lot of them have said, yeah, it is a savings. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that with us because we just hear the rhetoric on both sides, but, we've been talking about TCJA and saying like, look, this really impacts real Americans, just your regular middle class working folks. It makes a real difference. And you're actually putting numbers to that. And I think that's important that we actually, we can empirically see how things have affected individual families and also the economy. Maybe can you talk to me a little bit about like your clients? You have a pretty diverse group there where you can see multiple data points as to how effective or not effective the Tax Cut and Jobs Act has been. Any stories that you have from your clients and how it affected them?
I know for a fact that I have a friend, they're not necessarily a client, but I have a friend that sends their kid to a private school. And if they were paying the 2016 tax rates, I know for a fact that they said if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts go away, we're going to have to reconsider our ability to send our kid to a school that aligns with our values. Like they're going to either have to sacrifice something else. If they can find something, if they can't find something to sacrifice, then, that might make them make a different decision. But, so there's that as well. The other thing I'll say is, everybody, when they're in my office, all of a sudden becomes a fiscal conservative. Nobody wants to pay taxes. Everybody wants to limit their what they have to pay Uncle Sam in taxes. So I even got a client that calls Uncle Sam Darth Vader, or the IRS Darth Vader. He's like, I just wrote a check to Darth Vader this year. Man, I don't like it. But I have clients that are on the very far left. I have clients that are on the very far right. And every time when they're in my office and I bring up the topic of taxes and how everybody wants to know, how can we minimize paying Uncle Sam as few taxes as possible? And I always have a trick question for them. I'm like, well, how many times do we want to pay Uncle Sam? And it's not 0 because we don't want to go to jail, but it is 1. We just don't want to have to pay more than once on income tax or pay as little. We don't want to pay more than once if we can avoid it. Whereas if you get into, capital gains taxes on some of those same dollars, et cetera, we want to really minimize how much we're paying in taxes. And they all want to be like that and try to minimize it. It's kind of funny sometimes.
Well, even folks, there's a range of people, and a lot of folks believe like, hey, I'm willing to pay taxes for, national defense or roads, or you pick your thing. Different people are at different parts of the scale there. I think, though, what most of us can agree on, unfortunately, is like the way taxes have gone up federally over the last century is really troubling. It feels like we pay more and more, and yet the country's more and more in debt. There's just more and more spent when we're contributing more and more. And that's why I feel like I'm actually optimistic about with the new administration, with DOGE kind of doing its work about trying to find wasteful spending and then trying to, keep the Trump tax cuts. I think that's the right combination, because you can't just, if we're going to keep taxes lower, I would never say low because they're not, but lower, we need to solve the spending problem also. And I think people would have a lot more confidence in our government if we were much more diligent about eliminating wasteful spending, because you'd feel a little better about where your taxes are going to.
I agree. I'm not going to go into all the things that frustrated me about USAID and what they were spending money on, but it boggles my mind how much and how little people know about how much the government spends, and how I mean, it is a talking point of mine about when we're talking about taxes and tax implications long term. So the way I tell people is my job is to help you save taxes over your lifetime, whereas an accountant's job is focused on 1 year. So over that lifetime, when we're looking 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, we want to minimize that. And it took us 242 years to accumulate $18 trillion of debt as a nation. And then it took us another 3 years to accumulate another $18 trillion of debt. At some point, that spending is going to kill us, crush us. And that means they're going to, when any entity gets into financial trouble, they have one of two ways to go about fixing it: cut spending or raise revenue. And the federal government does not like to cut spending. So how does that impact my clients? It's like, well, do we want to pay taxes now or later? Because likely tax rates are probably going to be higher in the future. They're not going to be really any lower, but they're probably going to be higher. So now there are some things I like that the administration is offering. No tax on tips. They had thrown out, I think it was either $150,000 or $200,000 if you make no income less than that, no tax on income below those numbers. I would love to see that. I don't know how we can offset that, but we also have to be able to get our debt under control and pay that off without continuing the spending. And it's something that just concerns me, because I don't know that the average person and the average voter really understands those implications at all.
So let's just say in a bad scenario, TCJA, the tax cuts, are not extended or made permanent. How are you planning for that with your clients? And like, what kind of impact do you think that would have?
So it would depend. We're probably still going to try to save the same dollar amount. It just would might shift where we save it. Whereas right now I'm encouraging a lot of clients to use a Roth, whereas you pay your taxes now, you don't pay them again unless you make some stupid decisions. So we shed that tax liability. It'll be a case-by-case scenario. I think younger people probably will still encourage that, but older people, we might have to switch when we're attempting to save it. It will depend each case-by-case scenario on each individual plan as to what we're trying to accomplish and where I see the long-term projections going. The nice thing is I have some pretty cool software that can help us make some of those decisions. But it is something that I'm going to have to bring up of, okay, now you're in this tax bracket. You're going to pay an extra $6,000-$7,000 a year in taxes if we do this. But if we shift it here, we might get that down to $5,000. And here's the net benefit in the long run. Here's how it's going to impact you in the long run for your savings as well. So it's something that I can't say specifically this is the answer to this, but it is a case-by-case scenario of, we got to be very aware of what's going on and how do we pivot if necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really struck by the fact that sometimes we talk about in the political realm, we have rhetoric around different policies like tax cuts and how much people pay in taxes, but it has a real impact. We discussed earlier how you're helping people achieve some of their dreams. Well, if people can't keep enough of their money, they're not going to have as much opportunity to achieve those dreams. And I think policy really does matter. And I feel like this is one that hopefully Congress can get right and extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I think that it's, we can get caught up, like I said, in the politics, but we really want to be focused on how this impacts people's real lives.
Exactly. Changes will have to be made. Everybody, and that's top down. If I remember correctly, the tax rates right now, it's no tax above $10,000, but I think that goes away, or below $10,000, but I think that goes away under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So everybody will have to make some sort of adjustment, even if it's just a small amount for maybe $500 to $1,000 for lower income earners. The middle class families, like in my case, between $3,000 and $6,000. Who knows what that might what lifestyle change that might bring about. It is a real world impact. Does that impact you at the grocery store? Like where do you make those cuts and how do you adjust so that you're not going into debt? It's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with. And then how does that impact the economy in the next 2 to 4 years if it doesn't get extended? Fewer people like my family, probably not going to Disney, probably not going on vacations, probably not eating out as much. We were talking about Cooper's Hawk, one of my favorite restaurants, probably slow down going to those. Like everybody's going to have to make some sort of adjustment. I hope that come to fruition and that we're able to get those tax cuts extended.
Yeah. Well, David, I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your expertise, and especially you being able to speak to like the real world data points that you're seeing, the feedback, that you saw, the results that you saw in your own tax burden, but also through the eyes of clients. I think it's a super helpful way to put a real world face on the policy that we're talking about here. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks. Well, hey, folks, if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.